welcome, everyone today. Kenneth Lang here. So excited to have Liz Doggett here. And this is like a perfect networking story that I'm sure a lot of people can either relate to or maybe understand. Liz actually reached out to me on LinkedIn probably 2 months or so ago, I guess.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
When you were talking about, an event you were doing and you thought about having a conversation, and it was really, really great. And one thing led to another. And you just finished up this 2024 career reboot, which I was extremely excited to be part of. And just to let you know, I've connected with a bunch of the speakers since then.
Oh, great.
Just to kind of stay in touch with them,
Great.
Which is how networking is all about. So why don't you talk a little bit about what was involved with doing it? Like, where'd you get the idea from it, first of all? Let's kind of go way back.
Yeah. So I'm actually someone who has been a career counselor for a very long time. So it's been 20-ish years. It's been a little bit. But a couple of years ago, I decided to take a step back because I just really needed to for my health and for myself and my family. Sure. About a year and a half into COVID, I decided to take a step back and stay home and care for my dad who had dementia. And so as I've been, he ended up passing away about a year ago and, our family's been recovering. But as we've kind of emerged from that, the question has been, well, what do we do now? And so I really wanted to build a business and it's something I've always thought about, but I wanted to build one that had just a purpose and a focus and helping people who were in a situation like me where I was working and caregiving and it was just a lot, where it was just a lot. And so that's where the business came from. And so this event is our first venture. It's my attempt to get out there, network, meet people, but also to start building an audience of people who are interested in the topic.
So how did you come up with the name? Is it Hanai Careers or Hanai? I mean, how do you pronounce it?
Yeah.
How'd you come up with the name?
So the word Hanai is a word used for adoption and foster care at this point, but also the word used for caretaker and guardian. Okay. And I wanted this business to really be about taking care of our guardians, taking care of our caretakers. And so I love the word. I'm also adopted, so that's something that is a fun fact about me. But I love that word because it talks about the relationship, right, between both. And so, and for me, that was the inspiration for starting the business and starting the summit.
So I'd be curious to know where some of my LinkedIn tribe, if you will, is checking in from, for sure. And I think in the meantime, we had a whole conversation back and forth about what are we going to chat about? What are we going to talk about? What's the topic going to be? And as you have found out about me, I am an introvert. And the ironic thing about it is the conversation we had kind of went all over the place. It wasn't just one thing.
No.
And I think that's so hard for a lot of people to actually engage and have a conversation and even know where to start. But what compelled you to reach out to me? Not that I'm looking for a feather in my cap or anything like that. But
yeah. Well, I mean, it was because you were on LinkedIn and you were lauded as a LinkedIn expert. And I thought, hey, I gotta know this guy. And I feel like LinkedIn is always changing. It's so dynamic. So you really need to have someone in your corner, in your feed, if you're a job searcher, who's going to help keep you updated on all those things that happen. So that was really the pull, was just because I thought, I definitely have to, bottom line, have somebody who can help talk about networking in LinkedIn. To my surprise, this was awesome. I thought it was going to be good. I hoped you would reach back. But it turned out to be, I feel like this just really, we had a really great conversation. We had a great conversation on camera. Like, we're having a great conversation here. So it's led to a lot of really good things.
And I'd love to get some thoughts. Take advantage of the opportunity to join us. Just do some shout outs. Carol McCullough from New Jersey. Hi, Carol. Jonathan Woolley from Northern New Jersey.
Yes.
Michelle from Rutherford, and Linda Brubaker is one of my fellow LinkedIn trainers.
Oh, wonderful.
Excited to join from suburban Chicago. Rebooting careers is such an important topic.
Nice.
I would love to get a sense, what are the things you learned from some of the other speakers? I mean, things that were kind of great takeaways
Wow.
that could be shared. I mean, without, giving away too much.
Yeah. I I mean, it started from day one. I feel like the conversations, and I hate to break it to everybody, but the conversations we had before the conversations we recorded were gold. I mean, those are where I learned a lot, and I learned so much about where people are from and what they're coming with. Um, I think one of the big things was our first speaker. She was on the first video, Ann Nakaska. She talked about a method of learning how to roll with AI,
Okay.
basically, in short. So she talked about the fourth industrial revolution, which is basically the AI craze. I'm just going to
Sure.
call it that because it's a lot easier to process. Um, but um, but the fact that we've been through these overhauls in the way that industry works and that we've all adapted, and there were jobs on the other side. And a lot, like right now, because we're in that process of shifting into how is AI going to affect most industries now that it's become more mainstream. I mean, it's been 30 years, but it's become more mainstream. So, so she talks about a specific method for how to keep up. So she used it as an acronym. The acronym was GET. And so it was global. So be aware of global trends, entrepreneurial. So you need to think about what your skill set is and look at employers and other people as consumers of your skills, right? Like a consultant. And then technology. So just to keep up with the technology in your specific field and where that's headed. And if you can stay ahead of those three things, it will propel you. So I mean, honestly, right off the bat, it's been that, and then it's just been lesson after lesson after lesson.
And I'm still learning too all the time. I had a conversation with, because I do the work at Lee Harrison. I'm a branding specialist there, and I'm always learning from those people that are in transition.
Yes.
About the things that they're going through. And sometimes it's an aha moment for me because I'm making an assumption. And sometimes it's an aha moment for them. And I think it's so important. And I talk a lot about this now. It's about listening. You really have to listen sometimes, whether it's to a job, whether it's to an interviewer or to someone else, because, that's a skill that's very much lost, I think.
Yes. And one that comes naturally to introverts. Which is nice, right? We come with a natural talent for that usually.
I think in large part because we're contemplating what we're going to say, if we're going to say it, what happens if we say and it doesn't come out right, or worse yet, really kind of thinking, what did I just do? I mean,
right. Yeah, we like to process all of our actions and past, present, and future. Yes, at the same time.
I know. And
got a lot going on in here, so we don't talk a lot.
I know one of the things I learned from a bunch of extroverts especially during COVID. I'm on a call with these extroverts who I love very much, and I couldn't keep up with them. And then they were saying to me, "What's going on? Why aren't you responding?" I'm like, "I just have to think."
Yeah.
And I think what I have found more than anything else is this inclination to be curious more than anything else, because the challenge I find with people out there now is that they're so stuck in what they're used to doing, and it's very hard for them to get out of the mold. I see this with resumes all the time.
Yeah.
I see resumes that are all in the past tense, and it's great, but what is it going to do? What's it going to do for the next employer? And they're like, well, that's a resume. Yeah, but it's okay. But I've learned one thing over anything else in this industry. The answer to most questions is it depends. There is no right or wrong. It depends.
Yeah.
So I think, just to check a couple of other things, I know this week with the holidays, things are going to really be shutting down to some extent with trying to reach out to people. But I use this, and I'm going to use this as a perfect opportunity to redo my LinkedIn profile and even my resume, and then going through my laptop and cleaning kind of a winter cleaning sort of thing, because
Yeah.
you're never going to have that chance again. And I think those are the things we take for granted. We're
Yeah.
still put in the mold of doing the day to day.
Well, and so much of why I wanted to do this event this month,
Mm-hmm.
as counterintuitive as it may seem, because hey, we're going into the holidays and everyone's got other things on their mind, is because they do have other things on their mind. But what will happen on January 1st is that they have to return to something, or January 2nd, or whatever the date is. They have to return back to their jobs. And for those of you who are out there and you're like feeling the tension of having to go back there, that is a really, really clear sign. Speaking of that listening, that's a really clear sign that something needs to shift this year.
What do you see as some of the changes in 2024 based on the conversations you've had with other people? AI is definitely going to be a part of things.
Yes.
Do you see more in-person interviews? Because based on what happened in the past, people were all doing these Zoom interviews and things because of COVID. Whereas that's still going to be a familiarity that people are just going to be doing all this stuff more online, even though they can do it in person.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to go back. Honestly, I don't think we're going to go back to the way business was done before. Okay. We're just not. Time only moves in one direction. And now that everyone's gotten a taste and everyone's been through the pain of the transition, oh, well, now we can just do this on Zoom. Oh, now we can just do this on Slack. Oh, now we can do, so now that we were really forced to look at the tools, forced to utilize them, forced to learn them quickly. Now we have them. So as we move forward, it's like, well, why would we drop them off in place of having everything be in person? Now, I'm not saying that some things aren't going to continue to be in person. And so you want to be prepared for that, right? Like you want to be prepared for in-person networking is going up again. So if you're part of networking groups or doing some of that intentionally, having parties, get-togethers, those kinds of things definitely have gone up again. And the biggest thing with the tools that we have online is that they now complement that instead of it being one or the other. So we kind of went here and we flipped to the other side, but now we're finding that middle ground. And so, in the year coming, that's really what it's going to be about. So you might be doing screening interviews online, but then be doing, full interviews in person, or there's going to be people who are, getting your information through LinkedIn in a quick apply, or through ZipRecruiter or wherever. They're getting your information that way. They're using AI to screen your resumes,
right?
But then they're still going to, when it's time to interview in person and interview on the phone. So I think it's just we've got more stuff in our arsenal now, and so now you can pick and choose what tools. So we definitely do need to keep up with those things, though.
And as Thomas brings up, starting off 2024 digitally clutter free.
I love that. Inbox zero, the dream, living the dream.
And the truth of the matter is this, and I say this very apologetically to some people. I don't get back to some people because I just get inundated with stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm not even talking about connection requests. There's so much information out there and so many people trying to do things that they're not even thinking about why they're doing it. I think in general, the challenge that we all have is dealing with the automation the best way possible, because automation is a fact of life. And I think, even on a job spec, they may be written by AI to some extent. But I think one of the things that a bunch of us have been talking about is to have some group that can kind of have some best practices with AI, whether it's through resumes. Like you can have AI write your resume for you. You can have AI do your LinkedIn profile. Yeah. But I don't know about you, but I can tell these from a mile away.
Right. Yeah. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect thing by any means. But anything that can be copied or patterned is something that you can get from AI.
Well, it's a reference tool. It's a total reference tool.
Yeah. Well, but you can also feed it patterns. So you can say, I would like my resume. I would like some resume bullet points. Here's a paragraph of things that I've done. Can
Mhm.
you put it in this form in a bulleted list that will start with an action verb and end with the, like, so you can manipulate that to understand the pattern that you're trying to get it to do. And
Mhm.
anything that can be learned from a pattern, it can follow. But anything that can't be, that's where it gets really imperfect.
Do you find, like I do, because I do speak to hiring managers from time to time,
Mhm.
and I get the feeling that many of them want to change and make the job search process easier, but they're kind of stuck in what the mindsets are for the companies and the protocols.
Yeah.
So that as much as they want to, they have to go through all these different steps. And in job seekers, it's very frustrating. And some
Mhm.
hiring managers or recruiters, it's frustrating to them. So
Yes.
how do we fix this, make this process better? Or is it even not possible?
Well, I'll say this. I've worked in career services for a long time, and so I'm not in HR. So I'm going to go ahead and just speak to that, even
Sure.
though I'm not in that position. But what I have been in the position of is being that user of the technology,
Okay.
that manager trying to hire, and had difficulty because the technology did not meet the process
Mhm.
well. And so I think what we're going to have to do as professionals in any field that we're in is really think about wherever AI exists, because honestly, AI has existed in resume writing for years.
Sure.
You've had these technologies where you can, or these, apps or whatever, where you could start to type something and it'll help you with the
Mhm.
answers, right? So these things have existed. But the question is, where are you going to sit and position yourself next to the technology, right?
Mhm.
But when it comes to human resources, it's really difficult because if your processes don't match up with the technology, you can blame it on the tech or you can blame it on the process. But when they don't match up, it makes it really painful for the people who are applying, and it makes it painful for the people who are hiring.
And
So
that,
if you haven't heard from somebody, in a while, you applied for a job, it went out into the void, as my partner likes to put it, it just went out into the void and it never came back. Um, you should know that part of what you're talking about there is on the other side where you get inundated. People on the other side of that get inundated.
and
They
then,
just
and
get
then
tumbled with
a
resumes.
lot of
And
people are,
sometimes they're relevant, sometimes they're not. Um, but they get inundated, and then if their processes are not smooth, they
right.
don't get it doesn't people don't get through the process smoothly.
And part of the issue is that, and I found this from a couple of recruiters, they get so many applications from people that aren't even really qualified for the position that it
Yeah,
takes up
and
their
aren't even
time.
interested really.
Right, and it just takes up their time. So it's a catch 22.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's a big part of it. I think to some extent, um, we talk about AI a lot, and I think the most important takeaway from AI is to take advantage of it, not be afraid of it,
Yes.
um, but to learn about it. We're talking about a whole new world, and you bring up a good point. It's like a new industrial revolution. It's like a digital one, and you just never know where it's going to go. I mean, we've had AI for a while, like you said. I mean, we're used to AI with Alexa. We're used to AI with other things. I mean, that's all AI.
Google will fill it in as I Google something.
Speaking on your phone to get a text out, something like that. I think,
Autocorrect.
yeah, I think for job seekers, and this is another question I have, and I'd be curious to get your feedback. There are a lot of people out there that are looking to go to full time,
Mhm.
and they've done consulting, or the opposite. They've done full time and they want to go to they want to do like a pivot in terms of what they're looking to portray themselves as, and they're afraid they're going to be pigeonholed. I've done all this consulting work. Why would you hire me full time?
Mhm.
Or the opposite. I've done all this full time work and I need a consulting gig now because that's all that's out there. And I'm not sure what the answer is per se, but I'm curious to get your thoughts about that.
Yeah. Well, you know, honestly, the first person who needs to answer that question is the job seeker.
Okay.
So that's you. You have to say, because why would I hire you? What would be the benefit?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and in my mind, just applicable to anybody who's in any field,
Right.
I would say this. If you've been a freelancer, then you're somebody who's worked with a lot of different companies.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able and having that in-depth, intimate relationship with multiple companies gives you an advantage because you can see trends across different companies, what different practices, different, like we said, how the processes and the technology work together. You've seen it in action in a number of different ways. So if you're coming to be now someone who's going to produce that or be someone who's going to create that in a full-time position, you have a lot to pull from if you've been a consultant, right? You have a lot of experience basically without having to have had all 12 jobs. You've been able to look at these 12 companies because they've been clients of yours. I think on the other side, if you've been this person, in this company, and you now want to move into more of a consulting or a leadership type of role, well, not leadership, but it is a type of leadership, I guess, but, a consultant type of role. Well, you've been a practitioner, so you understand the nitty gritty of how the technology and this how they meet and how they miss. And where they miss is, if you don't understand where they meet and where they miss, then when you come in and you have to implement a policy, you have to stand behind a decision that you've made. If you haven't been through it as somebody who's done it before, then you're really giving poor advice. You're giving uninformed advice, right? So really, you're the best person to be a consultant if you have been in the trenches with that work and been in the nitty gritty of it and dealt with the pressures and dealt with the struggles. I mean, when I was in leadership, I can't tell, at least a good 40% of my job was, these are all the times I've been led and not been happy. And so I'm going to base this on how do I flip that to the positive? So I want to be a leader who does this because when this happened, this didn't work well for me, and you can take that into, if you're a practitioner, you can take that into really either role, but definitely into consulting.
That's why I bring it up, not because I want people to get a sense of things that they can do, because we get a lot of people that are just in their box and that's all they're going to do. And they don't think past the next thing.
Yeah.
And it's okay to fail. It's okay to try things out.
Yes.
Because that's how you learn. All the years I was consulting, I picked up things along the way, things I liked and things I didn't like, which helped out. And sometimes the things I didn't like, although let's just say some of my assignments ended earlier than I wanted to, but I learned from those assignments what was going on. And it was a lot of self-care and a lot of understanding. And I think you really have to take an inward look, as you said. I had a conversation today with someone who's trying to do 3 different things at the same time. And I'm like, you got to focus on this, do this, give that a try, and then maybe try that later on, but you can't do everything at the same time.
No. And you ultimately won't influence anybody to hire you. You will not compel anyone to hire you or to think that you're the best fit if you're not sold on the idea.
Right. So Thomas brings up, most people can't use Microsoft Word well. I'm unsure if they will be well trained to make an effective resume to sell their stories and value. And I've noticed AI written resumes. The other thing I've noticed is a lot of template driven resumes. People download these templates for the resumes online, and you can tell from a mile away. Again, Jenna Salomons and I, we both work at Lee Act Harrison as branding specialists.
Okay.
And there is a clear indication when a resume is written with AI. The human superpower is being able to take the AI generated text and apply it to your skills and strengths. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I think, AI is just a draft. It's just a draft. It's to get you from, I have no idea how to talk about this, to something on paper. And then you tweak it from there. I don't think, if you think that AI is going to spit this out and then you're going to put it out there as is, then you're going to get that weird language that comes out of it sometimes where it says something like, high power synergy or something where it's just going to talk about things like where you're just like, what does that mean?
my thing is, I love when they say successfully completed. If you didn't successfully complete it, why would you put it on?
Right.
I mean, I get that a lot.
Well, hey, you know what though? That is a good question though.
Okay.
Because sometimes people don't successfully complete things.
Okay.
And they put things they don't really want to talk about on the resume thinking they have to. So I will say I have seen that where sometimes people say, okay, well, this was a big part of my job. Well, but if you weren't good at it, don't bring it up. It's okay. Talk about the other stuff.
Well, even from the failure standpoint, I have shared over the years things I have failed at. And I'm talking about, I was canned from one place because I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I thought I did. And I couldn't do the dance anymore, and it was just a decision to leave. And after that, that was the last position I had as a developer, to be honest. And I realized after that moment, I don't want to develop anymore. Yeah. I just don't want to do it. And then another position that I failed at wasn't a failure so much for me, but I just didn't like the company culture as a consultant, and I didn't want to be there. I saw the way that they were treating people, and I was so afraid I'd be the next one out the door. Yeah. So I was very diplomatic about that, but you learn about yourself in this process. It's not great to be fired or lose an assignment, but you will learn in hindsight some of the things. And there's a lot to be said for that. You may not learn about it right away. You know, the one time it happened when I didn't see her from a mile away, I was shocked. And I didn't realize it until I talked to my manager 7 months later. I happened to meet him somewhere. And he said, you know, Ken, it wasn't just you, it was a bunch of people, and we made a decision, but I guess you thought you were the only one. So I felt a little better. I wasn't happy about it, but sometimes even reach out to people that may have terminated you or that you lost. Reach out to them again. Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
People move on all the time, and there's no way of knowing where they ended up. I think that's the mindset of a job seeker. It's like, I lost my job. I got to move on. I can't think of the past. I can't think of the past. Why not? There's a lesson in everything.
Yeah. And there are a lot of people in that past. You know, you don't want to throw out the baby with the past, right. Or the baby with the bathwater, right? Like, you know, because maybe this was a tough experience because of your skill set. Maybe the climb was too steep on the, you know, as far as what you had to learn, the learning curve. Maybe there were a lot of things. Maybe it was not really set up for anybody to succeed. Mm-hmm. And I know nobody really wants to talk about that sometimes, but sometimes positions are just not built well, and the structure is not very supportive of those positions. So even though you like everybody, and even though everything, you know, you're pretty good at your job, it's not sustainable. And so there are lots of things like that where everybody in that circle would still gladly support you. Everyone in that circle would still gladly recommend you as a potential supervisor, would gladly, you know, put a testimonial or put a, you know, note of support or endorse your skills on LinkedIn or whatever. Mm-hmm. You know, and supervisors, especially during layoffs, because a lot of times your supervisor didn't want to lay you off. Right. It was a decision that was beyond them too. And so make sure that you're leveraging the people that you continue, you know, to work for, to work with, and alongside when the job ends, but the relationship doesn't have to.
I remember when I was a manager and we had to lay off people. And the reason we had to lay off the people, which we couldn't share at the time, was because the company was being purchased by another company. Mm-hmm. And we didn't want to say anything until the purchase went through. Right. So if you've never had to terminate someone, it is very hard. Yes. And again, this is not meant, I'm not looking for sympathy or anything like that, because it's what you do. But if you think it's hard for the job seeker, it's hard for the hiring manager. They may never let on to it. Mm-hmm. They may put on a smiley face there, but they're people. Anyone who says otherwise as a hiring manager, they're just wrong. You know, right. You know, I think the most important thing is sometimes it is nothing personal, which is horrible to hear as a job seeker.
Yeah, because you take your career personally.
Absolutely.
But the action itself, right, was a business need, was a reaction to a business need.
And then in one case, I was part of a group. We were, and this is going to date me a little bit, but way back when I worked at Prudential Healthcare was purchased by Aetna. It became one thing. And all of us from Prudential Healthcare were told that we could then work for Aetna. Well, along the way, the Aetna people said, no, we don't want them here because we don't want to duplicate the efforts. Mm-hmm. So after that experience, and this was 20 something years ago, I just decided at that point, you know what, I have to look out for myself. As much as people care about me, there's nothing you can do about stuff. And one of the reasons I'm empathetic to a lot of people is I can see it from different sides, but at the same time, there's a self-care aspect to this, especially this time of year. I mean, so many people I know have actually just lost their jobs.
Yep.
I know one person that lost their job the same time he was bitten by a dog. He was bitten by a dog on the way out of work after he lost his job.
Yeah.
It just happened to be that way. So, like, if you think you've had a bad day.
Yeah. Well, and and I want to make a note just because my specialty, for those that don't know it, is working with working parents and caregivers.
Okay.
So people who are unpaid and caring for family members. So that, not necessarily nurses, but people who are caring for the family members outside of work. And that can slowly slide into being let go. You can slowly slide into being let go when you have to care for someone who is ill, and you can't continue to show up for the job. You've worked through your FMLA, you've worked through some the channels that the job has to offer you. And I know there are supervisors out there who have had to be in that position where if you can't come back to work, then we have to give your position to someone else.
So let me ask you a question along those lines. Let's say someone has to take 9 months or a year off for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And there is that gap. Do you recommend that they acknowledge the gap in some way or just speak to it later on? Because we've all had gaps.
Yes.
This is not a new thing. Before COVID, we had our gaps and things. We all took time off. But how do you recommend people portray that?
Yes.
Is it just as a line or something, or is it just like a cover letter? What would you suggest?
Yeah, honestly, anywhere that you can explain it in prose, not on a resume, I would not bother on a resume. I've never seen it done well on a resume, honestly. Mm-hmm. And there are skills that you gain. There's knowledge for sure. There are leadership skills. There are life and death decisions that you're making. There are things that you are gaining from that experience that will help you in the long run. But that's just not the place to put it. You want to put it in a cover letter if you feel like you need to explain the gap. If it was a year or two, I wouldn't even bother, honestly. Mm-hmm. But if maybe you're in a field where maybe that's looked down upon a little bit, or they may expect an explanation of some type. They can't ask you why there's a gap, but you can volunteer the information. So if you want to frame it in a way that you're comfortable with, because you're also talking to strangers about what might be a very personal issue, right?
Right.
Then you can address it. You don't have to, but you can. And if you do, I would suggest doing that in a cover letter, in a one sentence. Something to the effect of, I have a break in employment, or between this period and this period, I was a full-time caregiver. And now I'm blah, 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 blah.
Right.
What I'm doing. Like, really, I mean, it's just explain it and move on. And then the same thing with interviews, because you don't want to get into the story of your personal life with the interviewers, because that gets to be a really slippery road, and you want them to understand what you have to bring to the table. You don't want to spend the little time, precious time that you have talking to them about things of a personal nature that may make them feel uncomfortable because they don't know you, and make you feel uncomfortable because you don't know them.
I think that's also a great way to use LinkedIn from an engagement standpoint, where you can talk about your experience and put yourself out there. When I had my 2-year gap, I did a lot of volunteering.
Yep.
I did a lot of volunteering. I joined local organizations just to keep busy.
Right. And that's another way to get out of the house.
Yeah.
Keep your skills up, right? 2 great things. but also something you can put in that gap on your resume.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because at the time, my kids, one was just starting high school, one was in elementary school. So I became the official PTO dad for a little while.
Yeah.
And it was funny because, and I joke about this once in a while, I was a member of the technology committee from my school district's PTO, which involved just making 2 calls and making sure stuff was taken care of. Nothing more, but it sounded a lot better. I mean,
yeah. Well, and to you, that might not be a big deal, but you'd be surprised at the number of times I've been in work situations where somebody had to be a public speaker, or I got cornered a couple times to end up to go on TV and do a segment,
right.
or here, we want you to go to this event and just talk to a radio host for 15 minutes. And you turn around and all of your coworkers have left. Like you can see the like, you can almost hear the Roadrunner sounds in the background as they've ditched out because they don't want to have to do this. So sometimes, things that may seem easy to you or to one person,
like I would do
terrifying to others.
PowerPoint presentations, and they appreciated that a lot because they couldn't figure out how to do a PowerPoint presentation.
Just like that, yeah. And it's something you do every day, all the time. Don't think twice about. And that's also, I mean, just looking at it from a philanthropic standpoint, that's an offering you can give also to your community. So during that time, when normally you might be working full time and not have the ability to engage in some of these things that happen during the work day, this is your chance. It's really your opportunity to do that.
Give yourself a chance. Let people know you're available to speak for them at events. Let people know you're out there. Now, before we end, do you want to put afterwards in the chat like a link to your business or what you're looking for? Because I definitely want to give you that opportunity. I mean, are you looking for new clients now, or are you looking?
Yes, yeah. So we're open to new clients, and I'm just going to put this in the chat here. So it's just at hanaicareers.com, nice and easy.
Okay.
And you can, okay, I was going to see if I could see that there. And you can click there and book online a discovery call. Those are free, just to see what you need help with, to make sure that I'm a good match for that, to make sure you feel good about it. And, and it's really, I guess, a mini interview for each of us to get an idea of, whether we feel like we'd be a good fit. And if so, then we can move forward. A lot of what I do and that I've done with this event, we were talking about the event 2024 Career Reboot, and I want to also put that in the chat. That is an online.
You'll have to put in the chat on LinkedIn because the only one that can see it is me.
Oh, okay. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, let me pull that up.
If you go to the event, or I'll write it in later on as a statement, because I think, and that's the thing about technology and things. I mean, we're having a great chat off to the side. I mean, one of the downsides of being on these calls is that we can't post the comments ourselves.
Yeah, sorry about that. No. Well, that's okay. I can tell you, and then we can add it to the comments later.
Or if you want to, in the future, like when we do this again, you can put that underneath your name there, or your all that.
Yeah, absolutely. I can put that in there. Yeah. So this is honestly, like right now, this is us learning in real time.
Absolutely. And the best part is a lot of people are going to watch this chat later on, and they're going to comment later on, because we get a lot of people that watch it later on. Yeah. So Liz, I want to thank you very much for today. Have a great holiday.
Yes,
it was a pleasure being part of your career reboot. And I can't wait to see. I've started to watch some of the other people. But I want to just check it out again some more. So
well, and I want to tell everyone here, if you get signed up by tomorrow, 2024 careerreboot.com, you can see all of the videos. We're going to have a 48-hour replay, so you can see anything that you've missed this Friday and Saturday. So it'll be midnight to midnight, Friday and Saturday.
Have a great day, everyone. Next week, end of 2023, we're doing the good, bad, and ugly of LinkedIn. So it's going to be, we're compiling our list. We know what the worst part is already, and that's the connection limit. That is hands down the bad and the ugly.
Yes, that's the ugly.
And it's very rare.
We're going to figure out a workaround.
No, and there are workarounds, but this is our letter to LinkedIn. If you're listening, that this is what we like to have. And I went back to what I did in 2022, and they actually did make some changes in a good way. So you can just never tell.
Yeah.
All right. So have a great day, everyone.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you for having me, Kenneth.